I carried that 3D camera all the time, and pictures turn up all the time. This one was at a very precise time. In January of 2001, there was going to be, and there was, an eclipse of the moon. And it was not just an eclipse of the moon, but it was an eclipse of the moon that would happen exactly at sunset. And of course, lunar eclipses that happen at sunset also happen at moonrise, because moonrise and sunset mean that you could draw a straight line from the sun through the earth to the moon. And so here I went to the top of the World Trade Center, and I set myself up. This is with another kind of camera that I use that is a panoramic camera. This panoramic camera is called a wide lux and uses 35 millimeter film, and it wraps the film around a section of a circle, and it takes a photo that is 1/3 of a full circle. So this is 120 degrees of picture, and I would go to the top of the World Trade Center, to each of the 4 corners, and I would take a picture, and then I would move 100 feet to the other end and take a second picture, and then I would go to the next side. So I went, and this is south from the World Trade Center. They had added, look, razor wire, because they were increasing their security, because it had been attacked previously. But after that shoot, I got a lot of good pictures. I got full 360 degrees of the city in panorama, and all of my exposures on the film were a little under, and I said the wrongest thing I've ever said. I said, oh well, it'll always be here. So, but this picture has many beautiful things, including Governor's Island right here. And this is where the ferry landed in Governor's Island. And we walked this way and here. So here we are. So in this pseudo-virtual reality situation, you can look here and you can see us. If you put your hand out the window and waved, it would appear there. Well, it won't really appear there, but... And I took pictures with that same camera many years before. This was in the 80s. And I used a black and white film that had extremely high resolution and had extended sensitivity into the red, in little ways into infrared, so I could get the very sharpest possible picture. And this is the view looking east. And you can see a little tip, I think, of, yes, this is the tip of Governor's Island. So, I took that picture, and there's much, much, much to see in it that's beautiful. But then I learned about something, and I looked at my own original file of the left-hand view of the top of the tower that was included in the picture, and I saw it had George Willig, 5/26/77. And what that is George Willig was the guy who decided to climb the World Trade Center. And at first the police tried to stop him. And then they decided, what the heck, he's an okay guy. And they let him complete his climb. And they let him sign his name. And I photographed, he hadn't drawn a little picture yet. And I then went back to my own photo and zoomed way in and found that I had taken it. So you saw the immensity of that photo, you know, the immensity of this. It's over here. You won't be able to see it. It's just so tiny. And I showed you a 3D camera, and the 3D camera takes two pictures at the exact same time, right? But sometimes it's wonderful to take a picture with an ordinary camera, move maybe the same distance as your eyes, or maybe a much greater distance. And that kind of picture is called a cha-cha. That's what I was taking from the top of the World Trade Center. And here, I took this last summer. This is the Ferry. If you came here from Manhattan, you came in this old ferry terminal that's being refurbished, which is right next to the extremely ugly new Staten Island ferry terminal. And the ferry was moving in this direction, and so I was able to take a picture. And then the ferry moved, let's say, 20, 30 feet. And I took another picture, and then I precision aligned them. So now we have a 3D picture of Lower Manhattan. And they discovered pretty early in the history of airplanes that not only could you take great pictures from the sky using a camera and from a moving plane, but they also knew that if you took two successive pictures, you would have a stereo pair. Now for this pair, it's very strong 3D. They took the two pictures as quickly as possible, but the plane, moving pretty fast, just moved so very much. So you can see beautiful 3D bottom, beautiful 3D middle, or 3D top. You can't really experience good 3D over the whole picture at the same moment, because the depth is just so very strong.
How far apart do you think the two shots were?
Oh boy, I'll take a guess at 120 feet, but that's just a personal guess. I've taken a lot of pictures. On my, from the World Trade Center, it's a knowable, I think it's about 100 feet, and that's knowable. Now, this was taken in the 1930s, but this building with its sort of wedding cake front that keeps coming in was already built. And until last year, my cousin had his accounting business on a high floor that had a terrace. It was either this floor or this floor, and they had the fireworks display on July 4th right across from it. So we went up, a whole bunch of my family was invited, and we're up on that building, And now from the terrace, I'm pointing north up the East River, and I took this. The amount I could move on the terrace, you know, I couldn't go the long way on the terrace. I was going the short way. And so I only got about 12 feet of separation. But I think you have pretty good depth all the way through here. So this was July 4th of last year. And after the sunset and it was dark, there was the fireworks. It would have been nice to have two cameras set up for fireworks. Then you need to open their shutters and then leave the shutters open as the fireworks does its thing. And then you have to close the two together, and that will give you great fireworks 3D photos, but that isn't what I don't have that one for you. But coming back from Governor's Island last year or the year before, the ferry moved across the East River, and I was able to get the same scene from water level here. And you get to see all three bridges in 3D.
There's like a second between the shots?
Maybe a second between the shots. On the photo that was before it, this one, sometimes I will do the thing of if someone has moved, I will move them back. You know, I would sometimes it just doesn't matter if something moves, but sometimes, oh, that would look so nice. So I take a picture from the left. I think the guy standing here maybe had moved in between the two pictures.
I'm sorry, I came a little late, but you're shooting two pictures with one camera sliding along a rail.
Well, sliding along a rail would be the best. I was going picture, picture.
Yeah, so there's a pretty big interocular distance.
A pretty big interocular distance. So we've been talking about interocular distances, and there have been a couple of pictures so far where it was 100 feet.
Oh, yeah.
And for this, I'm going to say it was 12 feet because the terrace was facing that way, and I could only go as far out as the terrace was, you know. So I'm, you know, from the edge of the building to the terrace. The edge of the terrace was like 12.
So you're doing this handheld?
I did it handheld, and
you have to align it pretty well in the computer. Right?
I do.
Rotation.
Yes, I'm. Let me see how to put it. When Photoshop came out, I started using it right away. And I do all the work on all of these pictures in Photoshop. And I really, I'm a Photoshop stereo alignment maniac.
I see.
So on every photo, I always fix the alignment. I've never seen a stereo picture that I said, this was shot so perfectly, I don't need to fix the alignment. So there was the one from the boat, from the ferry, and here is the other side of the terrace of that building, that nice wedding cake style of building. And here we are in looking at Governor's Island. So the ferry from Manhattan landed here. We walked behind this building, and then as we got to about here, we turned back. So we're somewhere there. I can't be pointing spatially correct, right? Because of this depth here. But you see, so here is, you know, I got pretty good alignment right as I moved it myself. And then actually this morning, I went in and corrected this area. This area didn't seem perfect alignment, but I was in a hurry and I didn't add it to the picture. So I realized that what I want to tell you is that I spent 20 minutes making this area so it would be a little bit better. And I have various Manhattan photos. This is an old stereo view, and it's a photo taken from the very much like my World Trade Center 3D picture, taken from the top of the Empire State Building. And it was taken by somebody who was thoughtful in terms of they didn't get quite as much depth. They could have had a bigger interocular distance, but they were thoughtful about being there when the shadow of the Empire State would align with the Chrysler Building. And I gave the most recent talk that I gave was last month for Jane's Walk. I don't know how many people have heard of Jane's Walk, but Jane Jacobs was someone who believed in urban living and in a walkable, livable city. This Governor's Island, it would be a wonderful dream for her. And the New York the Municipal Art Society runs the Jane's Walks in New York, and I used this slide for that. And the Municipal Art Society, when I went there for its they had orientation for new speakers, and I went to their offices, and I found that their offices overlooked St. Patrick's Cathedral. And so I was able to quick run over to the window, take a picture, move about 8 feet, and take a second picture. And here you're seeing St. Patrick's Cathedral from the offices that you enter on Madison Avenue of the municipal. Say it again?
Is that snow?
No. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And I had noticed it, and then I forgot. This is May.
Today is June 24. Today's June 24. And you took this in back in March or something.
No, it was in May. Oh, the talk, that's right. That my presentation.
The photo was taken when we turned off.
That's right, because the talk was in May, and the orientation for new Jane's Walk speakers was there. But it was still already warm, and there was big time snow. And here was the second picture, and you get to see the problems that come with doing cha-chas, where you take a picture and time passes before you can take the other. So the buses on Madison Avenue have moved. This bus didn't move, right? This bus didn't move, but these buses moved. And I considered fixing it in Photoshop. And in the spirit of loving architecture and the river, I have a favorite piece of modern architecture in New York, and not many people are even aware of it. Does anyone know what you're looking at right now?
Yeah, you told me it's the 39th Street Terminal.
Yes.
Hudson River, right?
Well, it doesn't count if you know. Yeah. But so the 39th Street Ferry Terminal is just a beautiful piece of work. And
It's on the east side.
this is on the west side. This is the Hudson River and 39th Street. And you never see it listed as one of New York's pieces of wonderful architecture, but I think it's the finest piece of modern architecture in New York. Here's another view from in it. And here's the funny thing, because it has to do with transportation and interstate transportation, they have super security rules, and photography is against the law. And so I do criminal acts, as if you could outlaw photography, as if there was a single person in the terminal who wasn't carrying a camera, right? There was not one human in the terminal not carrying a camera.
Don't let your wife know.
And here's a corner of it during a snowstorm of a few years ago. And during that same snowstorm, it formed,
Oh, great.
it naturally formed, oh, I meant to have this fade up into it. It naturally formed this shape. It has this, you see this white line is the top edge of a piece of very sturdy shatterproof glass that is a fence rail, and they can slide these doors wide open, and there is still glass up to this height that keeps you from falling into the Hudson River. And during the snowstorm, snow got between the outer glass and the inner glass and formed this shape, and formed, and it matches this famous Hokusai great wave at Kanagawa. And I had previously worked on that. You won't see 3D in this. This is a type of image called a random dot stereogram, and you really need to be able to look at it in the appropriate size and without glasses, but doing a trick with your eyes. And I made these. They were very popular 20 years ago, and many of the pictures in the books I made. But if you look at this the right way, you would see the Great Wave in Kanagawa in 3D, and only if you look that way. So I put, for a next section, here is my block where I have lived. And there is a church, a very, very beautiful church, and it is a Serbian Orthodox cathedral. The building had been built as an Episcopal church. It was a branch of Trinity Church, and it was sold to the Serbian community in the 1940s, and the most famous Serbian American, Nikola Tesla, and I'm a fan of Nikola Tesla, and I'm wearing a Tesla t-shirt for today in honor of that. So they had the statue, and I had been photographing the Tesla statue for a while. And here's another photo of him, and this illustrates something else. I did some correction, in geometric correction to the overall photo, so that all of the verticals would be perfectly vertical. Architects used to do this by manipulating the parts of their cameras. And now I do this using Photoshop. Usually after I do it, I would crop the image and you would never even notice that the image has been bent into a slightly weird shape in order to make the content of the image not be weird shape, but have all the verticals perfectly vertical. But sometimes I display them this way so that people can see the interesting dichotomy going on. And there's another Tesla image here. Here, someone built a kind of a junk sculpture that if it's viewed from just the right angle, you will see it as a portrait of Nikola Tesla. And they shot a film, and it was on YouTube, and I took 2 frames from that film and made it into a stereo 3D pair. So I'm indeed a Photoshop specialist. When I get up in the morning and I make really good latte coffee, and as the caffeine starts getting into my brain, I will often sit down at the computer and pick one of my digital 3D images and work on it. And here, right in my neighborhood, right on West 20, I'm on 26, this could be 25th or 24th or 26th. And this is the Tesla dealership. So this is for the Tesla car. And I thought the beauty of the dealership and then the oddness of the reflections in the glass, in the thermal glass, told something. And one more Tesla. And this is a plaque just around the corner from me. There is a building that they now call the Radio Wave Building, and this is where Nikola Tesla lived. He was kind of, electricity as we know it today came from 2 very great inventors. One was Thomas Alva Edison, and the other was Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was more of the mad scientist. He had some very good ideas that were kind of ahead of Edison. Edison was down to earth and invented every modern device known, right? So he invented the light bulb. He invented movie film. He invented the movie camera. He invented the movie projector. So, but Tesla's role was also extremely important. So this is now we're still about my neighborhood. I looked out my window. I had just, this is 2011, and so that we're talking 6.5 years ago, and they had just come out with good digital 3D cameras. Before that, I had used film for 3D. And I look out my window and I see they're shooting a movie. And I had a gorgeous view of this. And I don't know if you recognize already who it is and what it is, but that is Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. And let's look at all the interesting things going on here. This is Amazing Spider-Man. None of the shots they got that day made it into the final movie. This shows you how huge the budgets of films are. They shot for a whole day, and they just didn't need to use that footage, and they didn't. And Emma is amazing. She is, first of all, I have captured her in midair. You can see that she is in midair. She is running barefoot. And she is running over shards of broken rocks and glass. Actually, this device right here is fires out all the rocks and glass that is hitting them, and it's all made of foam rubber. They cleaned the street perfectly, and then they messed it up with lots of broken rocks and explosions that were made of plastic foam. And this woman, who is watching very carefully, has the job of making Emma's hair perfect. So she makes Emma's hair perfect. They have a take, and her hair runs wild, and then she has to get the hair back to perfection. Meanwhile, Andrew Garfield is busy texting somebody. He's just standing there texting and waiting. And this camera is a camera called the Red, and it's two cameras. Red is a very high quality video camera, and you can put two of them side by side, and it's a 3D camera. And then that night, another night, a couple of years later, there was the Serbian Orthodox Cathedral got used for another film shoot. So there's this beautiful night film shoot. And then last year, on March 5th, I'm sorry, I said wrong. On May 1st, which was Orthodox Easter Sunday, a terrible fire broke out in the cathedral. It was the strangest, saddest thing. I was in my place, I was at home, it was late in the afternoon, Easter Sunday, and suddenly I'm seeing flames erupting from the cathedral, and I photographed it. I went outside. I could be shooting from my window. And I want you to notice, no, come on in. You can see the 3D slideshow. And look, there's 3D glasses and chairs just awaiting you. So, you get some interesting depth from the fire hose. And in the tree, I think you'll see it better in the next one. Which picture? I want to show you something in the tree. No, it's not there.
Plastic bag.
Yes, this is a Fairway plastic bag. It lasted through the fire hoses, through the cleanup after the fire. It lasted exactly 1 full year, and it fell down Easter of this year. That's the story I wanted to tell you. So we're moving forward, and then this is the next morning. They are still hosing down the building. And here's more. And then the next day I was able to go around to the front of the building. Nikola Tesla was saved. Somehow someone grabbed and preserved Nikola Tesla. And these two flags, the Serbian flag and our flag, I believe were up on that Easter Sunday and simply lasted through the fire and have not been touched since, are simply still there. And here is the building at night. They're starting to put up a street shed. There are still firemen watching it very carefully. And for an optimistic note, here is St. George's Church. And St. George's Church, you may know, it's in around East 15th Street. And it burned down in 1865. And it took them and it burned down the same way, meaning the basic structure remained in place. And it took them in 1865, it took them 2 years to rebuild it. And now we're coming to some beautiful things around New York. This is Wendy Whelan, the ballerina, with Brian Rooks at the Hudson River Dance Festival, which performs, this is at 23rd Street and the Hudson River. So this really shows you the spirit of beautiful New York, livable, enjoying the parks, the beauty of the parks. And it's free. And this was free too. Washington Square, a little kid loving it. And this was taken, this is the Wright brothers airplane, and this picture shows it in Virginia, which is where it was in the early days being flown. But it did fly. One of the Wright brothers flew their plane off of Governor's Island here. That's what I wanted to tell you. So this was an early New York airport. And across the street from me, next to the cathedral, there is a flea market. There's a flea market, and I love the flea market, and I often photograph it. And this was just an odd opportunity that came along. And it's what comes to you if you have a camera in your pocket all the time. And here is a birdie having breakfast. This is a stick-on bird feeder stuck onto the plate glass. And here's Wonder Woman. This was actually in the window of the museum on 17th Street. The museum on 17th Street. The Rubin, yes. This is in the gift store of the Rubin because it talks about the warrior goddess. And this is on my block. And this was, I think I took this on the first day I walked out with a digital 3D camera, right? I had been using film 3D cameras, and then I had a first digital setup, and he just happened to be cutting steel just the right way for beautiful 3D. And there's the Intrepid and some volunteer workers painting it.
Looks like a Norman Rockwell painting.
It really does. And this painter looks as if she's just relaxing, but you can see she's reaching up and working very hard. You have to catch the opportunity. And I also am careful about how I fit a 3D picture to the edge of the image. You know, the window, the rectangle that borders the whole image is called the window, the stereo window. And sometimes it's good to have things come forward of the window, but if they touch the edge, it can be problematic. So I remember putting a lot of careful thought into how I placed the image. Another magical opportunity, you know. Winston is listening to the specials. I mean, you just have to look at the dog and you know his name. And this is not exactly a photo, but it's video frame capture from videos that I made. On the 1989 Steel Wheels tour, I directed 3 3D music videos for the Stones, and this moment was from 2000 Light Years from Home. On one of their very early albums was their Satanic Majesty's Request, and there was a song on it called 2000 Light Years from Home, and this was that moment. This was from that song, and Mick had just naturally held his hand this way, and I was able to have a friend generate this swirling whirlpool, and then using what was the greatest special effects device of the 1980s, which was called kaleidoscope. We were able to place the swirling tornado on Mick's hands as he moved his hands and track it. Today, you could do that in Photoshop, you could do that in After Effects, but that was the device, the K-scope, cost in 1980s dollars something like $500,000 per channel, and I had something like 6 channels available to me in the edit room every night. I had booked the edit room for nighttime editing so that nobody else would want to use my precious K-scope channels. And when the edit house finally went out of business and had an auction, the channels of K-scope went for, I don't know, $8,000 each. And this is at a favorite beach of mine. This is called Fort Tilden, out at the end of Rockaway, at the western, near the western end of Rockaway. And creative people just love it. It's just like Governor's Island, except it's a beach. It attracts the creative people. And we went out to the beach to enjoy a day at the beach, saw a group of people just working on this creature who they named Holy. And it was half done when we passed. And the seats are good. Yes, take the seat and the glasses. And then as we came back, they had finished it and gone home. I so much like the idea that someone will create a work of art and then just walk off, you know, because so much of art has to do with how you promote it to people later. And here they were doing it for pure pleasure. This is Governor's Island. This is several years ago on Governor's Island. And these, I believe, are moths. I suddenly spied them. This is October. And I have gone to various park rangers out here, and I have not gotten a solid answer as to what they are. But there were a gazillion of them. They must be mating. Something must trigger that. I mean, people, you wouldn't do that unless sex was involved, right? So it must be that they're out there conjugating. And but I never got, and I tried asking someone at the Museum of Natural History, but they made great 3D, and it was in October out here. And the next photo, which is a beautiful photo that I took just a couple of minutes later, is Marteen, who you've seen, who's sitting right here, posing. And it is a beautiful photo. I am crazy for reflections. Here she is upside down. And in 3D, reflections are stereo coherent, right? The same 3D experience you see up here, you see down here. Little bit of ripple on the water, but also, whoa,
I'll take care
you
of
do it.
I'll gaffer it.
See, we need a good gaffer, yeah. So,
I missed the beginning of this, but are you using a camera or are you just taking a separate?
in this case,
Yeah.
I was using a 3D camera, the same 3D camera that I always have in my pocket.
Yeah, I have one.
This is a Fuji W3, a wonderful camera. It's the best 3D camera. It's also a lousy camera. I mean, you could get a much better camera if you didn't need 3D, but and it's discontinued, so you have to hunt for it now. But what this picture also tells us is that this beautiful sunny October day had been immediately preceded by a heavy rain. So there was a heavy rain, and then this beautiful sunny day, and all the moths who live out here all said, wow, let's do it. And as you came out here, you took the ferry, and maybe you saw on the Ferry fender of the stop these words, "at the same moment." And this is a piece of conceptual art by the artist Lawrence Weiner. And I don't know what he had in mind with "at the same moment." But for me, it's very, very meaningful, because we've already been speaking about taking 3D pictures with a camera that takes the two pictures at the same moment, and also taking 3D pictures not at the same moment, and then putting them together as if they were at the same moment. And but this picture has something else wonderful in it. I don't know if anyone spots it. Yes. Yes, it's a grebe. It's a grebe. And it looks awfully like the Loch Ness Monster. And there's a lot of speculation that that's what the photos of Loch Ness really is. And the grebe is the most aquatic of birds. It swims or flies happily underwater for long periods. And it just happened to be there. I wasn't trying to photograph the grebe. I wanted to get a good photo of the ferry fender. But here is another photo of the same thing, but it is not at the same moment. This is on an evening of the full moon, and I wanted there to be depth in Brooklyn behind. So I took a picture and I moved, I'm going to guess maybe 30 feet. It would be nice if I could, I should always write down what my distance of movement is, but I don't. And, so here you're seeing two different moments. It's not at the same moment. And I'm crazy for the moon. And here is Banksy. Put this, and this is a favorite, this little piece of leftover dock I have seen, I have loved and photographed many times. It has quite a variety of foliage, and I have photographed that foliage many times. And then suddenly it was completely removed, and it is being built back in a restored version. And I work on the moon quite a lot, and these are two photos taken of the moon on 2 different months. And let me explain something about the moon. The moon is a sphere. Here, this roll of tape will pretend to be a sphere. As it rotates around the Earth, it does this. It always keeps facing the same side towards us. You never see the other side of the moon. The other side of the moon we call the dark side of the moon, but it's not really dark. It's just that we never see it, because it's until astronauts went around it and photographed it from the back side. And so I just told you that we always see exactly the same side of the moon, but we don't see it exactly. As the moon goes around you, it keeps facing you almost perfectly, but as it does it, it does a little wiggle dance like this. And like a cha-cha is not a little wiggle dance, it's a big step, but it does a little bit of wiggle dance, and it's The wiggle dance has been calculated, and it is known as libration. It's like the word vibration, but with an L in front, libration. And that libration is known. So if you take two different photos of the full moon and you align them really well, you get amazing 3D. And they knew this back in the mid-1800s and started making pictures that way, 3D pictures of the moon in the 1800s, and it was very popular. But I have always had, even before computers, a special ability to align 3D images, and I was always able to align them better than the astronomers who took them. And when Photoshop came along, my ability to do that, compared with what the 1800s astronomers could do, was colossally different. So I realigned this image, these 1800s images, and got the 3D alignment almost perfectly. And if you will carefully remove your glasses and turn your glasses backwards, you don't have to bend them backwards, just hold them backwards, you see the inside of the moon. That's the inside of the hollow moon. Of course, I'm making a little joke about the inside of the moon, but it's an amazing depth effect that you get, amazing reverse depth effect. And here's, she needs to see the moon.
See the moon before it goes.
Look at the moon with your glasses.
That's right, you got it. Isn't that great?
Oh.
See the moon, he's going to switch the thing. Look at the moon.
My elementary school was in Manhattan, and I can go ahead.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah. My elementary school was in Manhattan, and I have been invited back to give 3D slideshows, and I've given them even for second graders. And at this one, they often go, ooh. So this is down at the Battery, and so I lined it up so the Statue of Liberty is there. And I had my gull wrangler tell the gull to stand still over. And this is an early 1930s airplane 3D photo of the Statue of Liberty. Look at the boat. You can tell it's from the early days of airplane photography. And this was taken with a special adapter you can get for this camera that makes the interocular not 2.5 inches, but about 9 inches. So I was able to get the board paddler in nice depth against this ship at 25th Street. And this is a great place to go, and they will serve you drinks.
This is East or West 25th?
This is West 25th. And here,
What did you call that movement of the moon?
if you take a picture and then move and take another picture, that's called a cha-cha.
Yeah, I know that, but the shifting in the earlier picture, the shifting
Of the moon, libration.
Oh, I thought that was something to do with ball. Never mind.
Oh, okay. The libration. It's a great word because it sounds like vibration, but it's libration. So I gave a workshop here at the Holo Center, we had a different, this is 2 years ago, and we had a different building. And this is actually a cha-cha, where I took a picture and then moved a little and took a picture. And in this case, I could have taken a normal 3D picture, but I was giving a workshop in making cha-chas. And here is that camera in infinity. And I should mention that what you need to make this kind of picture is for the two pieces of glass, the glass behind you and the glass in front of you, to be absolutely parallel, to be perfectly vertical and parallel. In this case, they weren't perfectly parallel, they were tipped a little bit. And the tipped a little bit means that the infinity keeps going upward, and it's actually for the better. And now this is maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and this was towards the end of using a film camera. It was also towards the end of my skating career. I have skated I probably skated the streets of New York longer than any human being ever, because I skated the streets of Manhattan in the 1940s on metal-wheeled skates. And I did it until just a few years ago. And so I was on skates when I took this picture. And I also want to show you what the sign behind him says. No rollerblades. Skateboards allowed. Yeah, it's just barely. So I like that it makes you a juvenile delinquent. And something else that I love photographing. I love photographing Marteen, and this is in a special circumstance. There is a full moon every month, of course, and the day before the full moon is a very special, wonderful day. And let me tell you why. On the day before the full moon, there is a time at around sunset when the sun is above the horizon. So here's Marteen in a ballet pose, and her shadow on the building is perfect. So that's a shadow created by the sun. And it's so close to a full moon. It's a 99% of a full moon. And there's an apparent full moon in the sky. Different, because the full moon happens at a particular time on a day. The day before the full moon, there can be some variation, and you need to have. This is out at Fort Tilden, which I mentioned before, where Holy the dinosaur was, and so the sun has to have room to. Because look how, if you draw a line from her finger to her finger, you will reach where the sun is. And so the sun was about maybe less high above the horizon than the moon is here. And I promised that this would be an hour show, and it's an hour and 10 minutes, and we're coming to the end. So this is Central Park. This is why you have to be quick with you're walking through the tunnel, you have to be quick with your camera. That's the one bad thing about digital cameras. They're not always ready to take a photo. With a film camera, you press the button, it takes. This takes a few seconds to come on, and I have so many regrets. So, okay, that's the conclusion of this slideshow. I'd be happy to answer questions. I love questions. Good. Good.